Welcome to the channel. We're excited to explore ideas that shaped Western civilization and the world in this series. Our goal is a family-friendly vibe, though sensitive topics might pop up. As such, viewer discretion is advised. When guest speakers join us, we'll ask them to keep in line with our standards, but we can't promise that. Our aim is to break down concepts clearly and concisely without oversimplifying, and focus on discussion of ideas, not necessarily the promotion of them. Satire, nuance, and devil's advocate moments might arise, so context matters. The channel and its team don't officially back any views that are discussed. We'll adapt as we go, and we'd love your civil, constructive input. Check descriptions and comments for info. Our goal, to be open-minded, evolving, and exploratory. Thrilled to have you here.
Hello, and welcome back to our read-along series. Today we're going to be continuing reading Plato's Republic. We are in Book 1 currently. Probably going to be finishing that off in the next couple sessions, next couple episodes. We left off with Socrates talking to Glaucon and basically saying that the practice of an art, which is maybe a little more general than we would use it nowadays, but like a job, a vocation, an activity, the doing of that is separate from the payment. And so the only reason that good people would have, because there's no money and honor in ruling a country, if they're being honorable and honest and not, embezzling or something or being dishonorable, that if they're good men, they would not wish to, for reasons other than avoiding punishment, or there was one other thing, wasn't there?
Yeah, I think the distinction that they kind of made was that good men rule out of necessity and are kind of
Yes.
forced to serve, where I guess those that are less noble or honorable would have more of a desire to serve, whether it's to whether the ends are to, I guess, impose their own
hmm
ideas or to gain money. But I think that the important distinction is that good men would prefer not to rule,
hmm Because
when
it's providing
they would be the
service.
preferred of the two.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and it says, let's see, they must be paid in one of three modes of payment: money, or honor, or penalty for refusing. Sweet.
Yeah,
All right. Do you want to pick it up after the big paragraph?
sure. So yeah, I guess for kind of recap, if you're just joining us for this uh, episode of the series, he ends with two questions, which are, which of us has spoken truly, and which sort of life, Glaucon, do you prefer? And then he goes on to reply, I, for my part, deem that life of the just to be the more advantageous, he answered. And did you hear all the advantages of the unjust which Thrasymachus was rehearsing? Yes, I heard him, he replied, but he has not convinced me. Then we shall try to find some other way of convincing him, if we can, that he is saying what is not true. Most certainly, he replied. If I said he makes a set speech, and we make another recounting all the advantages of being just, and he answers, and we rejoin, there must be a numbering and measuring of the goods which are claimed on either side. And in the end, we want our judges to decide. But if we proceed in our inquiry, as we lately did, by making admissions to one another, we shall unite the offices of judge and advocate in our persons. Very good, he said. And which method do you understand? Sorry. And which method do I understand you to prefer? I said. That which you propose. Okay, so he's willing to go forward with the counting or the recounting of benefits of either side of the argument, it seems, or something of the sort. And then he goes on to say, well, then, Thrasymachus, I said, suppose you begin at the beginning and answer me. You say that perfect injustice is more gainful than perfect injustice is more gainful than perfect justice. Yes, that is what I say, and what I have given, and I have given you my reasons. And what is your view about them? Would you call one of them virtue and the other vice? Certainly. And I suppose you would call justice virtue and injustice vice? What a charming notion. So likely too, saying that I affirm injustice to be profitable and justice not. Interesting. He seems to be saying that vices are. He seems to almost be making an equation that the justices could be deemed as profitable. Am I reading that wrong?
I was kind of reading it as like virtue and vice are almost being used synonymous to like good and bad. And I think he's maybe referring to a sort of logistical, practical effect. Like he was saying, injustice is beneficial. And maybe Socrates is speaking more morally. And so Thrasymachus says that instead of justice being virtue and injustice being vice, he would affirm the opposite.
So likely to that I have affirmed injustice to be profitable and injustice not.
Mhm. Yeah.
I suppose that you would call one of them justice virtue and injustice vice.
I'll pick it up. What else then would you say? The opposite, he replied. And you would call justice vice? No, I would rather say sublime simplicity. Then would you call injustice malignity? No, I would rather say discretion. Ah, let me read that again. So you could say the opposite of justice, virtue, and injustice, vice. And would you call justice vice? No, I would rather say sublime simplicity. Then would you call injustice malignity? No, I would rather say discretion. And do the unjust appear to you to be wise and good? Yes, he said, at any rate, those of them who are able to be perfectly unjust, and those who have the power of subduing states and nations. But perhaps you imagine me to be talking of cut purses. Even this profession, if undetected, has advantages, though they are not to be compared with those of which I was just now speaking. So he's making a distinction between like pickpockets or small time thieves and maybe institutional level manipulators or people who take advantage of a system.
of an entire state or nation.
Yeah. So he would call justice sublime simplicity and injustice discretion. So I wonder if he means basically justice is naivete and injustice is, stealth or secrecy.
Yeah, I also wonder if, and this could just be a matter of artistic license within translation. So part of the meaning could have been removed per se. But I wonder with injustice being equated with discretion, kind of a, I guess, a parallel to the justice and mercy sort of distinction in like religious philosophy, you know, where
Huh.
like discretion could be read as some sort of like not being quote unquote like paid your dues for your actions.
Hmm.
And I guess that being said, and I should probably roll the disclaimer sequence again, but I wonder if like that's kind of uh, how he's saying this sublime simplicity, or the I guess the distinction between the sublime simplicity and discretion, where like the simple response to say a fireman getting a cat out of a tree to be taking them down, or taking the cat down, and then being like fairly compensated for that service, and then uh, and again, this could be a reach, but in Les Mis, when the main character steals the steals some food and some utensils from a priest, the priest catches him in the act and lets him go. When uh, in theory, the just thing to do would have been to turn him over to the police that also caught him in the act. Uh, but instead, he kind of turns a blind eye and lets him go. I guess under the pretense or under the assumption that he would turn his life around, but I wonder if there's some. I guess circling back to what I was saying, I wonder if there's some aspect of injustice not paying somebody what they are due, whether that is acts of good or
Ah,
not.
I
Does that
see.
make sense?
Yeah, so you're thinking of injustice as sort of the absence of justice, which could be a form of mercy in you know, um, the execution of it. The doing of justice or injustice. So maybe not the lifestyle, like they're talking about. The whether just living or unjust living is good or beneficial or virtue or vice. And you're saying maybe injustice as a practice could align with mercy as the avoiding of a harsh justice.
Kind of. I wonder if that's sort of the paradigm that that Thrasymachus is holding, that of the sublime simplicity of justice being, like, I guess to put it in a more modern way,
Oh, I see.
like getting what you deserve, where injustice would be sort of in the same vein as mercy, not necessarily mercy itself, but like more merciful.
Like, sublime simplicity is the letter of the law. Things are simple because it's just following the rules. That's justice, is following the rules. And injustice is discretion because it involves the making of judgments. Like you have to have discretion. The word, the use of the word being like to discern almost like
Yeah.
um, like maybe injustice is thinking things through. It's taking the complexity head on and kind of making your own judgments, making your own rules, sort of, on a case by case basis.
Yeah, I would say that that's where my mind kind of goes when I hear, or when I'm trying to understand this what they're trying to say. And I think that follows along with
Uh,
I think that follows along with with the response, and then uh or with the follow-up question and then his response shortly afterward, where he says, "And do the unjust appear to you to be wise and good?" To which he
yeah,
replies, "Yes." So
yeah. So then the unjust,
I
yeah,
guess
the
I do
unjust.
see. Sorry, continue.
Sorry, I think there's just enough lag in our connection to start talking. Um, yeah. So the unjust are the wise and goodness is the having of discretion. And I think maybe that is why I think this might have been what you were starting to say. Like he draws a distinction between like, oh, people who are unjust because they're criminals, like they just, they're pickpockets and stuff, versus the people who subdue states and nations, the people who have discretion in their judgments, who, are careful in their choices. And so that's why he's saying those are not to be compared. And that actually reminds me of an interesting idea from a show, um, where basically someone takes on the title and label of being an evil person or having an evil alignment. There's sort of a gamification in this show, but basically they are considered evil. And then
And you're
someone
using
is like,
alignment in the D&D sense, yes? Like the
yeah, like a roughly D&D sense. So basically the person has an evil alignment, but then like they seem like a nice guy, and someone's like, that doesn't make sense. I thought you're supposed to like be harsh and not merciful, and like why are you so compassionate? And they basically said, a good person is someone who always has to follow the rules, and so a good person is good because that's all they can be. Whereas a bad person is someone who is not restricted to being good. Is like, I can be, whatever I want. I can be good or I can be bad. Like I can be merciful or nice, by my own choice. But because I don't assign myself to be good, because I'm evil, I can be whatever I want. So he's kind of a paradigm shift of sort of freedom from rules as sort of being the evil, and I wonder if that kind of aligns with Thrasymachus's ideas. Like, justice is simply following the rules, and injustice is making judgment calls and, doing whatever is best.
And I guess that this kind of further continues the tangent in a way, but I'm glad you mentioned the word nice, because or before you, or while you were speaking, before you mentioned or actually mentioned the word nice, I was thinking of uh, one of the I guess influential thinkers in the media these days. It might have been Jordan Peterson, was mentioning or was talking about how there's a distinction between being good and being nice, where like a nice person is, I guess, necessarily weak in a sense, because they kind of just uh let
Like, just following the social rule, like they're just, it's not, yeah.
let things happen, whereas like a good person, uh, in contrast with someone that's nice, would be somebody who, I guess, to go
Can
back
be
to,
nice, but can also be tough love or the hard truths, or
yeah,
can
I
also,
guess to go back to like this conversation, somebody who is like just, like a good person is just, where a nice person is kind of,
oh, well, I was gonna say a good person, by the formulation you just mentioned, would be unjust or unjust by Thrasymachus's uh, formulation. Because in you were saying, a nice person is sort of the follow the rule of being nice, no real depth, maybe sublime simplicity, whereas a good person could be nice or not and does whatever is needed to be nice, or not to be nice. A good person does whatever is needed to be good, whatever is needed in the moment. And that is the discretion and wisdom that Thrasymachus, we believe, might be referring to. Maybe.
I don't know, I kind of see it like the exact opposite,
Oh,
where like goodness is like a good person like does justly, where a nice person would be unjust. Um, in the sense that like a nice person would be like, "Oh, here, you dropped this thing that I know you stole, and I'm not gonna like uh, condemn you for it. Uh, Here, take this thing that you dropped, that you stole, and be on your way," kind of a thing. Where a good person would be, "Oh, you stole this, you should be punished." Does that formulation make sense?
interesting. So, being nice. Hmm. Okay, so in that example, being nice is a more restricted alignment, but one that is not according to the rules, like the rules of law. So it's maybe the simple approach, the more shallow approach, the restricted approach, but it aligns with injustice. Whereas if you catch the guy or turn him in,
Oh, I see where you're confused. Yeah, yeah. I guess I follow. I now follow along with where you see my uh, my line of logic along these rules is kind of different. But yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, I might have to reformulate my thoughts on that.
we'll have to have a deeper discussion on the topic later. But let's try and keep it to just interpreting the text for now.
Amen to
All
that.
right. All right. Do you want to pick up at I do not think?
Uh, I, I don't think we read this previous paragraph. I kind of just mentioned, or I just read ahead a couple lines. We didn't really read the rest of that sentence, or the rest of that
With the cut
paragraph.
verses, and I did.
Oh yes, yes, you're right. You're right. Whoa.
If you don't remember it, I might have to read it again.
Yeah, for those in the back, myself included, despite me being front and center in this conversation, or us being the two conversers.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right,
Uh,
just go ahead.
anyways, he says, "I do not think I misapprehend your meaning, Thrasymachus," I replied. "But still, I cannot hear without amazement that you class injustice with wisdom and virtue." Honestly, yeah. And justice with the opposite. And he replies, "Certainly I do class them. I do so class them." Now I said, you are on more substantial and almost unanswerable ground. Uh, for if the injustice which you are maintaining to be profitable and had been uh, admitted by you as by others to be vice and deformity, an answer might have been given to you on received principles. But now I perceive that you will call injustice honorable and strong, and to the unjust you will attribute all the qualities which were attributed by us before to the just, seeing that you do not hesitate to rank injustice with wisdom and virtue. Any thoughts on that bit, or shall I continue?
Hmm. Uh, all right. No, I think let's just keep going.
Okay. You have guessed most infallibly, he replied, that I certainly ought not to shrink from going through with the argument so long as I have reason to think that you, Thrasymachus, are speaking your real mind. Interesting. I'd like to have a conversation, or potentially have a conversation on that aspect of speaking one's real mind in the future, maybe. For I do believe that you are now in earnest and are not amusing yourself at our expense. That's funny that he kind of has this change of mind in a way of instead of just like uh, laughing at them uh, at their expense. He's now kind of seemingly answering uh, or wanting to have an actual conversation.
Socrates is.
Uh, Thrasymachus.
Yeah. Well, that was
he's saying,
Socrates speaking to Thrasymachus.
no, yeah, that's what I mean. I think it's interesting that he notices that Thrasymachus seems to be actually invested in the conversation at this point, and is not just
Mm,
kind of poking fun at the old people.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I should
Basically, like,
have a
as long as that's what you actually think, well, let's talk about it.
yeah. I should point out that it's not cool to make fun of your elders. Apologies. I don't know if that phone call came through
Just well.
on the recording.
Okay, so Socrates says, "All right, let's talk about it. I may be in earnest or not, but what is that to you? To refute the argument is your business." "Very true," I said. "That is what I have to do. But will you be so good as answer yet one more question? Does the just man try to gain any advantage over the unjust? Over the just? Oh, does the just man try to gain any advantage over the just? Far otherwise. If he did, he would not be the simple amusing creature which he is. And would he try to go beyond just action? He would not. And how would he regard the attempt to gain an advantage over the unjust? Would that be considered by him as just or unjust? He would think it just and would try to gain the advantage, but he would not be able. Whether he would or would not be able, I said, is not to the point. My question is only whether the just man, while refusing to have more than another just man, would wish and claim to have more than the unjust. Yes, he would. And what of the unjust? Does he claim to have more than the just man and to do more than is just? Of course, he said, for he claims to have more than all men. And the unjust man will strive and struggle to obtain more than the unjust man or action in order that he may have more than all. True. We may put the matter thus, I said. The just does not desire more than his like, but more than his unlike, whereas the unjust desires more than both his like and his unlike. Nothing, he said, can be better than that statement. Hmm.
I would protest Thrasymachus's assertion there at the very end. I don't follow it.
So interesting. So Thrasymachus thinks that a just man would try to get advantage over an unjust man who does have an advantage over just men. And yet the just man would not be seeking more than other just men. It's like the just I'm thinking of it as like, ranking, like if a just tries to be better than the unjust, but the unjust is better than the just, is not the just trying to be better than a just, which he said they would not?
Because didn't he mention like earlier in this conversation that he's trying to assert that the unjust like always have an advantage,
Yeah.
supposedly?
Hmm. Which means if you were to try to surpass them, you would be trying to surpass other just men who by nature are below them, right? Of course, maybe he's referring more to their mindset, and maybe it's just by their nature that their mindset and their actions are discordant, or have a certain contradiction. Like maybe a just man would not wish or claim, would not pursue having more than a just man in his mind, but in practical matters, he would, try to have the better of the unjust, maybe not really realizing or thinking or claiming that would put him above other just men.
And then wouldn't that in turn almost make him unjust?
Right? But I don't know. Maybe I'm nitpicking, and maybe they didn't mean it as carefully as they said it, or I don't know. Seems a little weird, but I guess we could just keep reading.
So I guess in a sense he would say that, like, if a just man surpassed an unjust man, then the unjust man would be considered unjust. Like, then the just man would now be considered unjust.
Well, I would say that by virtue of him surpassing the other just men, he no longer falls under the category of wanting equality with the other just men. Thrasymachus would say, well, he never will. He never would. That's a pointless hypothetical, because the just will never gain the advantage of the unjust. But so maybe he thinks that kind of contradiction doesn't matter because it's not going to happen. He's thinking very practically and realistically.
Yeah, because like you just read, he says, like, whether or not they can receive more or surpass or gain advantage over the unjust is not the thing that they're trying to solve. It's as he says, his question is whether uh, a just man would wish and claim to have more than the unjust,
Mm-hmm.
while refusing to have more than another just man.
Yeah. Well, maybe we've over-evaluated what they said earlier with wherever we got the idea that the just won't want more than another just. Maybe we've kind of over-interpreted that. Maybe like he says, okay, does the just man try to gain any advantage over the just? If he did, he would not be the simple amusing creature which he is. So,
Which, in Thrasymachus's estimation, simple being just.
well, just being simple.
Oh, is that not
I don't know that he's Well, I don't know that
commutative?
he's using the words. Well, not necessarily. Squares are rectangles. Rectangles aren't squares. I don't think he's using the word simple to mean just, but to describe just. So the just people are, how do you say, like sublime simplicity is justice. So he would say just people are simple, and so simple describes them, but simple doesn't necessarily mean just. At least as far as what he said. Maybe he does think that, but I don't think he's claimed that.
Okay, that's fair. And like we've probably said a dozen times in this recording, if not others, we could just be reading further into / ahead of the speakers.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, maybe we should just keep reading and get their whole idea a little more and see if that answers some things.
For sure. It's me, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. He says, and what of the unjust? Does he claim to have more than the just man, or to do more than is just? Of course, he said, for he claims to have more than all men. And the unjust man, sorry?
Down a little more. I read that.
Oh, fair. To true?
I said, the just does not desire more than his like, but more than his unlike, whereas the unjust desires more than both.
Both
And he
is
said, nothing could be
and
better
his
than
unlike.
that statement.
Okay. And the unjust is good and wise. That's a hot take. And the just is neither. Good again, he said. Okay. So he's saying it is an unjust person is good. That's definitely a statement. And the unjust, like the wise and good, and the unjust, and sorry, and the unjust, like the wise and good, and the just, unlike them. Of course, he said, he who is of a certain nature is like those who are of a certain nature. He who is not. That I follow. Each of them, I said, is such as his like is. We should just read this in the Greek, Caleb.
I don't know how much easier that would be.
It's at this point, everything is Greek to me. Yeah, he says each of them, I said, is such as his like is. Certainly, he said. So like is similar to like. Very good, Thrasymachus, I said. And now to take the case of the arts. Okay, so they're circling back to this conversation about the arts. You would admit that one man is a musician and another not a musician? Yes. And which is wise and which is foolish? Uh, clearly, the clearly the musician is wise, and he who is not a musician is foolish. And he is good in as far as he is wise, and bad in as far as he is foolish. Uh,
So maybe they're using wise, or the word that is translated as wise, is not so much about judgment or like decision making or the way that we might use it nowadays. Maybe it's more like knowledgeable, skilled, like having knowledge. Unless musicians were just universally regarded as wise. I don't know. Maybe they were.
yeah, according to this one thing, technical skill or professional skill is being used to define justice.
Well, let's see. Earlier, talking about the arts, they mentioned like the art of being just as like handling money properly, or justice was giving people what they are owed, so giving money to those who deserve the money, giving violence towards enemies or whatever. And so in that case, being good at the art of justice is kind of the context of this whole conversation. Which that was a long
Okay.
time ago. They've kind of had a whole branch of discussion, so I'm not sure how it fits in now.
Yeah, I guess in that light, it does make sense that they would, or that Socrates is kind of trying to make that comparison where uh, skill with a instrument or with a boat or whichever is equivalent to the skill of being just. But I guess where I'm confused is, I guess, this idea of wisdom. Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So is he saying something to the effect of a musician that knows how to make music is wise, and somebody that does not know how to make music, who is not a musician, would not be considered wise?
yeah,
Or I guess even foolish, potentially.
yeah,
I guess the end of that last question. And he is good in as far as he is wise, and bad in as far as he is foolish. I guess I struggle to uh, understand why they use the word wise instead of like knowledgeable. You know.
yeah. That might just be a quirk of translation. Like if they use the same word in Greek that we would use for wise and knowledgeable, but it's more commonly used as wise, then that might kind of be the default translation, even though it doesn't apply as well in this case.
Mm.
I don't know. It's all Greek to me.
But
Yeah. So I wonder if Thrasymachus would say that, wisdom or knowledge is good, and those who are unjust are more wise and knowledgeable. He said that. So
uh,
then maybe those who are unjust are good and wise. Well, they're good because they're wise, and they're wise because they know things, and they know things because they're making the judgment calls, they're being careful, they're making the decisions, not playing by this one set of rules. And so that's why they're considered good, because they're wise. Because they are good at all the arts other than justice. Or, they they're capable, they're competent.
hmm.
Particularly the ones he's talking about, not just like pickpocketers, but people who, game the system and gain power. Those are competent people, and so they are good by virtue of their competence. Something like that.
Potentially. Do you want to take over?
Yes. So,
Yeah.
good in as
I
far as
guess.
he is wise, and bad in as far as he is foolish? Yes. And you would say the same sort of thing of the physician? Yes. And do you think, my excellent friend, that a musician, when he adjusts the lyre, would desire or claim to exceed or go beyond a musician in the tightening and loosening the strings? I do not think that he would, but he would claim to exceed the non-musician. Of course. And what would you say of the physician? In prescribing meats and drinks, would he wish to go beyond another physician or beyond the practice of medicine? He would not, but he would wish to go beyond the non-physician. Yes. And about knowledge and ignorance in general. See whether you think that any man who has knowledge ever would wish to have the choice of saying or doing more than another man who has knowledge. Would he not rather say or do the same as his like in the same case? That, I suppose, can hardly be denied. And what of the ignorant? Would he not desire to have more than either the knowing or the ignorant? I dare say. And the knowing is wise? Yes. And the wise is good? True. Then the wise and good will not desire to gain more than his like, but more than his unlike and opposite. I suppose so. Whereas the bad and ignorant will desire to gain more than both. Yes. Ooh. Okay. So now he's talking about the arts a lot and drawing the distinction between the practitioners and non-practitioners of the art. Which, in the case of justice, justice is doing the art, and injustice is not doing the art of justice. Right?
Yes. I that is true. Yes. Or I agree with that.
And practitioners only exceed non-practitioners, not other practitioners, which I would maybe disagree with, but that's Thrasymachus' view. So then in that case, ironically, maybe he'll bring this up, but I think the just as practitioners would not seek to be better than the just, but would seek to be better than the unjust, which is consistent with what he said. Seems a little funny.
To be more just than the unjust?
To be better in the art of justice, I guess.
Okay. I see
So I don't think
the
there's
clever distinction that you made. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't think there's any contradictions in there. But it's that's interesting. So then the ignorant or the non-practitioners seek more than everyone. And the wise and the good will not seek to gain more than other practitioners.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good to keep going. You want to pick it up? But did we not say?
Sure. Yeah. He says, whereas the bad and ignorant will desire to gain more than both. Yes. But did we not say, Thrasymachus, and this is probably to your point, but I'm not sure, that the unjust goes beyond both his like and unlike? Were these not your words? They were. And you also said that the just will not go beyond his like, but his unlike. Yes. Then the just is like the wise and good, and the unjust like the evil and ignorant. That is the inference. Hmm. And each of them is such as his like is. That was admitted. He's just doubling down at this point, or making him double down at this point. Then The just has turned out to be wise, and the good to be wise and good, and the unjust evil and ignorant. Thrasymachus made all these admissions not fluently as I repeat them, but with extreme reluctance. I love this kind of aside right here. It was a hot summer's day, and the perspiration poured from him in torrents. And then I saw what I had never seen before, Thrasymachus blushing. And we were now agreed that justice was virtue and wisdom, and injustice vice and ignorance. I proceeded to another point.
Interesting. So, in general, the practicing the practicing of an art is good and constitutes wisdom, knowledge, competence. But in the case of justice, injustice, as the non-practicing of justice, is considered what is good and wise. And so it's like an exception to his pattern of thinking. That's where the contradiction comes in. As we were now agreed that justice was virtue and wisdom, and injustice vice and ignorance, I proceeded to another point. Well, I said, Thrasymachus, that matter is now settled. But were we not also saying that injustice had strength? Do you remember? Yes, I remember, he said, but do not suppose that I approve of what you are saying, or have no answer. If, however, I were to answer, you would be quite certain to accuse me of haranguing. Yeah, haranguing. It's like to lecture someone.
I'll post the definition on the screen here.
Oh, he's gone. I lost you for a second. Yeah. A lengthy and aggressive speech. Yeah. You'd be quite certain to accuse me of haranguing. Therefore, either permit me to have my say out, or if you would rather ask, do so, and I will answer, very good, as they say to storytelling old women, and will nod yes and no. Certainly not, I said, if contrary to your real opinion. Yes, he said, I will, to please you, since you will not let me speak. What else would you have? Nothing in the world, I said, and if you are so disposed, I will ask and you shall answer. Proceed. Then I will repeat the question which I asked before, in order that our examination of the relative nature of justice and injustice may be carried on regularly. A statement was made that injustice is stronger and more powerful than injustice. But now justice, having been identified with wisdom and virtue, is easily shown to be stronger than injustice. If injustice is ignorance, this can no longer be questioned by anyone. But I want to view the matter, Thrasymachus, in a different way. You would not deny that a state may be unjust, and may be unjustly attempting to enslave other states, or may have already enslaved them, and may be holding many of them in subjection? So he associates wisdom and virtue with strength and non-practicing an art, or in this case, injustice, as ignorance. Whereas, before he said the opposite, but interesting. Yeah, I think they haven't really talked about. They've implied ignorance with respect to an art, like those who aren't a musician are more foolish or ignorant. Well, they use both those words. Huh. I don't know. I'll keep reading. So, a state may be unjust and subjecting people. True, he replied. And I will add that the best and most perfectly unjust state will be most likely to do so. I know, I said, that such was your position. But what I would further consider is whether this power, which is possessed by the superior state, can exist or be exercised without justice or only with justice. If you are right in your view, and justice is wisdom, then only with justice. But if I am right, then without justice.
That's funny. He says, I am delighted, Thrasymachus, to see you not only nodding in assent and dissent, but making answers which are quite excellent. That's good.
Pull that one out in discussions more. I am delighted to see you making answers which are quite excellent. Yeah.
To that, I would say that is out of civility to you. Of course. Oh.
Hmm. Well, we're getting towards the end of the book, but we're also short on time, so I think we'll finish it next time.
Maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, I can't think of much of anything to add to continue the conversation.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good place to wrap it up.
Definitely.
So justice was decided to be the stronger and the wise and virtuous, and they're going to be discussing whether an unjust state can enslave others with or without justice. Thank you all for joining us for another read along. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us through today's exploration. If this resonated with you, please subscribe, like the video, and hit the bell so you never miss an episode. Check the description and pinned comment for extra resources. Thanks again for being here, and we'll see you in the next one.